In 1991, Alice in Chains would join the Clash of the Titans tour, a package tour that included Anthrax, Slayer, and Megadeth. While Alice in Chains has earned the respect of metal fans around the world, people didn't really know who they were, or they were kind of on the cusp of breaking big. What you may not know is that Alice in Chains was never supposed to be on the tour, and in today's video, let's talk about the Clash of the Titans tour and how the band went from being reviled by fans and pegged as a hippie pop band to earning the audience members' respect, as well as their fellow musicians. In 1990, Alice in Chains would release their debut record Facelift. While we all know it later became a success thanks to the single Man in the Box, it was truly a slow burn, and the band owed much of their success to MTV. The Clash of the Titans tour would have two legs. One took place from September to October of 1990, with the other taking place from May to July of 1991. The second leg was supposed to feature the Bay Area thrash band Death Angel, but in November of 1990, the band's bus was involved in a crash that seriously injured their drummer, Andy Gallion. Unable to perform that tour, Death Angel were quickly replaced with Alice in Chains. For Alice, they had toured with a pretty eclectic bunch of artists for Facelift, with them first opening for Extreme, a band whose members and crew they didn't really get along with. Then they went on to play with Iggy Pop, Poison, and later Ozzy Osbourne and Van Halen. Slayer guitarist Kerry King had initially branded Alice in Chains as, and I quote, a hippie pop band. While the label was inaccurate, it did foreshadow the attitude that the band would get from Slayer's audience. Alice in Chains guitarist Jerry Cantrell would recall to an interviewer just how well they were received by Slayer fans, admitting, "Slayer fans were brutal to us. When we played at Red Rocks in Colorado, they were throwing so much at us that we could hardly see the crowd. Someone threw a huge water jug that knocked over Sean's cymbals, and spit was flying everywhere. Lane just shouted, "F you," and spit back at them, and was trading blows with them, so we all jumped the barricades and did the same thing, and we finished our set." King, meanwhile, would remember some audience members urinating in a big gallon jug and dumping it on Alice several times, remarking, "They dumped it on Alice in Chains more than once. I was just like, God, that sucks." Following the show at Red Rocks, Alice would head back to their bus, and they would end up running into a group of Slayer fans who had backstage passes. These fans started making their way towards the band, with Jerry remembering, "We're gonna get our asses kicked." But they walked over and went, "Okay man, you didn't puss out, I guess you're alright." Once the band got validation from Slayer fans, they could feel like things were finally changing for them. When the tour would stop in Seattle for a show at the Mercer Arena, Megadeth leader Dave Mustaine would be interviewed by Guitar World magazine. The interviewer would tell Mustaine that Alice used to be a glam band, which Mustaine wasn't aware of. It had turned out the interviewer, a guy named Jeff Gilbert, had some t-shirt designs of when Alice in Chains used to be more of a glam band, and when they went by the moniker Alice in Chains, kind of like Guns N' Roses. He sent some of these t-shirts to Mustaine, who had his tour manager make posters from the photos on the shirts and put them all over the Mercer Arena. Gilbert would recall to author David DeSola in the book Alice in Chains: The Untold Story, "By the time Alice in Chains showed up, you couldn't walk anywhere. Those poor guys would walk in and see this glam band, Alice in Chains, and it was so flippin' funny just everywhere before the doors even opened. So that way, when these guys rolled in backstage, it was the funniest thing." Lane and Jerry, for their part, thought the joke was pretty funny. Anthrax guitarist Scott Ian would tell Guitar World in 2010, "Alice in Chains had a hard time on that tour. We'd stand on stage every night and just watch them get pelted with anything and everything those crowds could throw at them. But you know what? In a lot of ways, it's what made that band." It was about a month into the tour, things started to shift for Alice. The band had released Man in the Box as the second single from Facelift, and there was a meeting at MTV's office sometime in the spring of 1991. The meeting was to decide which of two bands should get played on the network and be given the Buzzbin seal of approval. In one corner, of course, was Alice, and the other corner was a band named Blue Murder, who had two videos to choose from, Valley of the Kings and Jelly Roll. Tired of the hair bands coming out of LA, the network would go with Alice in Chains wanting to do something different, and this decision guaranteed that Man in the Box would get a certain number of plays for the week, and it would likely go into regular rotation after that. Jerry would recall the Impact telling MTV, "That video and the MTV Buzz clip helped us out a lot, and I know it helped out a lot of other bands as well. It can blow you up really fast." Only a week after MTV put Man in the Box on the air in May of 1991, Facelift saw a huge jump in sales, going from number 166 to 108 on the charts. 6 weeks later, it would peak at number 42 and would eventually go gold, selling over 500,000 copies. That does it for today's video, guys, and we'll see you again in Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.